It's there! Holy moly, this one's going to go big.
Hello and welcome back to the channel. So then, it turns out that gambling is really quite expensive. Yeah, I know, not exactly headline news there, but I do have some more numbers that I want to give you and just a couple of conclusions that are coming off the back of the previous two videos on the channel, which was that extended 2-day session with Boulder Dash, where there was quite a lot of play on those random games that we have now in the pub, only split up that the kind of one oasis in the middle of it all was that section where I was playing Vamp It Up, an old compensated AWP that I actually managed to win on. And there's also a reason why screenplay is on the screen in front of you now. I will get on to that. But first things first, let me give you the numbers that I've now done from the back end of that previous video. And what I'm talking about there is the back end of the second day session. There was a reasonably long section there where I got into some of the details around RTP and how much you can expect to lose and what your average spin cost and all that kind of thing is when you're playing these random games. One of the things that I said there was I suspect that £200 that I lost, because as a headline figure, that sounds really bad, doesn't it, being 200 quid down. I said I have a hunch that probably isn't a million miles from what you would consider to be expected results for the amount of play that I did. But I also kind of wimped out and said, at this moment in time, I'm not minded to actually go back and work it all out. Well, that was kind of preying on my mind. I thought, come on, Degsy, fucking go the extra yard here and let's get the actual numbers. So what I did was go back and count every single spin across those 2 days. I used an online clicker thing, which is like a digital version of those fucking things that, you know, like Dorman used to click people into venues. And here you go. It was this very thing here. You just do that and then you can do it with the space bar. Can you see? It adds up. So what I did was I had the video on one window in my screen. I had this in another window on my screen. And every time I did a spin, I just pressed the space bar. It was a bit tedious. There was no way to short circuit it, but I thought this is the only way that we're going to get the proper numbers out of this. And then we can sort out the sort of final results and where we think they should be. And it also came out the fact that we were having a decent chat about it all over at Desert Island Fruits. I'll go through some of that in a moment as well. But let me just give you, let's not faff about here, let's just get straight into those numbers. So I've split it into 2 days, and can you see there, what I've basically done is put them all into categories, because ultimately we don't care about the actual games themselves, or where I played them, or, you know, what cabinets they're in, or anything like that. What we care about is expected results as per that spreadsheet there. So all I did was I aggregated them together in the different sort of RTPs and stakes that I had. So £2 at 92%, £2 at 94%, and so on. And then using that calculator, as I showed you in the previous video, at the back end of the previous video, we can plug the numbers into that, and that will give us an expected result. That is assuming perfect RTP. That's assuming that mythical version of Worms where it pays out 92% and for every £2 spin you just get £1.84 back, because mathematically that's what's gonna happen in the long run. If you put 1 million spins through Worms on £2 a play, you're going to be very, very close, within the margin of error to a 92% RTP. So what that will have cost you, in fact, I mean, we can just put it in there. So 1 million spins will have cost you £160,000 if you just stood in front of Worms £2 to go. You will have lost, and you will be very, very close to that. That's a large enough sample size, particularly on a really low volatility game, because 250x is a very small top prize. That's 500 quid from a £2 spin. You are going to be incredibly close to that figure there, and you'll be £160,000 down. It's pretty stark when you look at it like that. And on some level, this is the way we have to look at this, is what is this mathematically going to cost us? Well, if you add all of those numbers up, that's all the different machines from all the different pubs at all the different RTPs, yada, yada, yada. If you do the whole lot, you end up with these numbers down here. Now, remember, what I actually lost was £200, but mathematically, my expected loss for the play that I did is that number there, £217.78. What that means in simple terms is that I actually beat the odds. I did better than you would expect. In a way, me, inverted commas, only losing 200 quid was a decent result. If I'd have been playing the version of Worms that just gave me £1.84 back for every £2 spin, I would have lost more than I did. And that there is the key takeaway here, is that playing random games on shitty RTPs is expensive, surprisingly so. And that's something that's come out of the conversation here. And I include myself in this, by the way. It's just one of those things where I'd never really done the sums on it. I knew that these RTPs were awful. I knew that it was going to cost me a fair amount of cash in the long run, but I hadn't quite realised it was as stark as this. And one of the points here, and this is something that Jason sort of emphasises here. Now, I think it's sort of implied in the videos. If you watch the videos, you will kind of see this for yourself. But Jason is right here that I could have sort of said it more explicitly in the conclusion. It's the rate of play that's really going to kill you on these randoms, because you're putting so much money through them so quickly on a high stake. Now, the obvious one to use as a sort of counter example here, which Jason mentions, was the old SWPs. That's your skill with prizes. So your quiz machines, your crystal mazes, I've covered those on the channel, your mating game, all that sort of thing, is they were often on appalling percentages. We're talking literally 30 or 40% RTP in some cases. 50% RTP would have been considered a really good payout for an SWP, but your rate of loss is much, much smaller. You know, the average game on the Crystal Maze SWP, you could be talking, I mean, the attract mode used to say average playtime 5 minutes. In my experience, it was often quite a bit longer than that. You know, you could be talking 7, 8, 9 minutes for a single £1 credit. So even if you didn't get the fiver, even if you had, I don't know, 5 goes on it and didn't get the fiver at the end of it, you're going to have had, as a bare minimum, about 25 to 30 minutes of play. So worst case scenario on that, you may be losing what? A tenner an hour? And the truth of the matter is that the way those crystal mazes work, because they compensated very, very quickly, you know, they didn't save for a streak or anything like that. They would build up to their payout, and it was only a fiver. It was only 5 times stake, if you think about it. If you put a tenner in a crystal maze, it would be gagging. It would be throwing golds at you in the dome. Like, I don't think it would actually be possible to get a tenner into a crystal maze without getting the fiver out. But let's say it takes you a tenner to get a fiver out. You've had an hour of play, and you've got half your money back. You've lost a fiver in an hour. So that's what Jason's going into here. You can see his post on screen. It's that expected rate of loss. So it is true what he's saying here, that just fixating on RTP and the size of your stake is they're kind of 2 points on the triangle. The other point on the triangle is the rate of play, the rate at which you're putting money through it. And the other point, again, that Jason makes here, and I did touch on this in my video, is that 100% gamble, even though the gamble is 100% RTP, the way that you need to look at that is that you are essentially massively increasing your throughput. If you gamble a £10 win or a £20 win or a £50 win, whatever it may be, that goes on to your wagering. So even though that gamble is 100% RTP, because it's coming out of your base game wagering at whatever it may be, 92% on a good day, it's increasing your throughput, and therefore it's increasing your expected rate of loss. Now, on one level, I guess, yes, of course, we all know this already, but coming out of conversations that have had, threads that have been had at Casino Maestro over the years, over at Desert Island Fruit, and even conversations that I've had with my mates in the pub here, you look at that 92% figure and you kind of think that you can't help it, because this is the way the human mind works. You sort of think, well, I'm due 92% of my money back. So once you get 50 quid down, 100 quid down, 200 quid down, in your head, and I do this as well, psychologically I do this as well, this is why I need to step back from it myself and have a think about the numbers, is we consider ourselves to be £200 down. But remember, that is the machine's expected payout. If the machine gives you your money back, it's lost. If you start with 100 quid and you finish with 100 quid over 50 spins or 100 spins, whatever it may be, from the machine's perspective, it's down because it hasn't taken its house edge of you. But as the player, if we get our money back, we just feel that we're even Stevens. But remember, just to get your money back, again, you have technically won. A loss is our expected result. So to actually buck the system on these and walk away in profit, you've got to beat a very substantial house edge. Now, and that is part of the reason, incidentally. I think I did sort of get there in my head. Where is it? Right at the end here, when I'm playing the last machine and I just managed to get a little raise here on Centurion in the final pub. And I actually said to Ed at that point, you know what, I'm just going to take that small raise and walk. Even though I knew in my head I'm still £200 down, I just had a sense here, hang on a minute, Degsy, you've been plugging away at these things for quite some time now. And we'd seen it happen. Me and Ed had seen it happen more than once just on this session. You get lucky, you get a bit of a raise to start with, you carry on plugging away on £2 spins, and all of a sudden it's just all gone. So I made a very conscious decision at this point. So you know what? Fuck this. I am just going to take the £200 hit. And as it turns out, that instinct, I guess, was correct. Because when you come and crunch the numbers, not only was I about where you'd expect me to be, I was ahead of where you would expect to be. And that's the critical point, the key takeaway point here, is you've always got to keep in mind where you are up to against expected results when you are playing these random games. Because once you start to rack up those spins, the longer you are stood in front of them, the more you are wagering, the more that mathematically you are going to be losing against that house edge. We've also, you can see it there, by the way. This was the 90% pub. Now, I think I covered this very, very clearly in the previous video. That notion where a small amount of difference in RTP can massively increase your expected losses. Now, in that one there, we've got a nonsense number there, but even so, look there, from 92%, where we're losing £160,000 over that spin sample, put it down to 90%, and all of a sudden you are losing £40,000 more over that spin sample. Now, obviously, that's a completely unrealistic spin sample in the short to medium term, but I actually added up my lifetime stats at 3 Dice. One of the things that you can do at 3 Dice, the online casino, I've been a player there now for 13 years, I think. You can ask for your lifetime stats, and they will send you a spreadsheet that they've pulled out of their back end with all your data, and it will have every single spin you have done ever on every single game, and it will work out your RTP for you. My lifetime spins at 3 Dice, the last time I checked, it was 2,300,000 spins that I have done in real money play. Now, obviously, I only play usually like somewhere 20, 25p, 30p at 3 Dice, and obviously you have things like bonuses are involved and prizes. I've won money in there like Christmas lottery thing and all that sort of thing. So it's not all been straight cash deposits, but using those numbers from before, if I'd have done 2.3 million spins at a 96% RTP, and incidentally, 3 Dice do have some games on their books that are higher than that. I think the highest they've got is Bonnie and Clyde, which is 96.4%. But let's just go with 96. 2.3 million spins on a pound to go would have cost me £92,000. Put that down to 90%, which, to be clear, that is a thing there. You can play that in the pub on 90% at £1 to go. Let's just change that number there to 90%. Boom! All of a sudden, my expected loss over that spin sample is £230,000. Let me just switch those numbers around for you again. We go from £92,000 to £230,000. Now, that may seem like a ludicrously large number, 2.3 million. And yet, that is the number of spins I have done in 13 years of play at 3 Dice. So if you want to try and stretch things out, is you can almost think about your play on random games as one long, extended session. So obviously we're going to have short-term peaks and troughs and all the rest of it, but ultimately, it's all because random events are entirely independent of one another. You can kind of string them in a big long line all together and work out a long-term calculation like that. Now, obviously, if you do that, there is a school of thought where you can say, it doesn't matter what that number is. You can make that number as high as you want, and you're always, always, always going to lose until you get to 100% RTP, at which point you expect, I mean, let's go at 99. I've made a slot that pays out 99.99% RTP. Guess what? You're still going to lose on it. And if you play it for long enough, you're still going to lose all your money on it. So there is a school of thought, and that this would be entirely reasonable for anyone to just say, fuck it, I'm not going to bother. These are not compensated machines. You can't get one over on them. But if, like me, you do actually enjoy a little bit of a punt, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with enjoying a gamble as long as all the usual sort of caveats are in place. You know, you're playing with money that you can afford to gamble. And I know these are cliches, but you know where your limits are. Like my limit, I went out with an amount of money. I had a limit. If at any point that 500 quid would have gone, that would have been it. That I'd been getting no more money out of the bank. That would have been the lot. That was my limit for that 2-day session. So as long as you can keep it in a box and keep it under control, then fine. There's nothing wrong with enjoying a gamble. I enjoy a gamble, but you have got to be mindful of these numbers. You've also got to be mindful, and I think this is particularly pertinent for UK players, people who, like me, and I'm sure if you're watching this channel, you probably grew up on compensated fruit machines. Because of the way that compensated machines work, which I have very well covered on this channel, you can be up on them. You can be up on them long term and you can keep winning. There is kind of no limit to how much you can keep winning on compensated machines, assuming that you have the required knowledge and in many cases the required skills to do so. Now, I am not a particularly skillful player. I've never made any claim to be a pro or anything like that. I was an ex-addict who got some decent information and had some average skills. You know, I could hit a real skill, I could hit skill stops, I could get good enough at those things to be able to get value out of machines. Not like perfectly, not as good as a better player than me would have done, but for a period of basically about 10 years like that, the real kind of high point for my winning career was 2001 to 2011. Was by 2012 and 2013, the compensate machines here were largely disappearing. I have covered that in the Death of the Fruit Machine video, but certainly from 2001 onwards, I was long-term up on compensated machines, and by quite a large margin. You cannot do that on random games. You cannot book these numbers, and the bigger the number gets, the more that you're going to lose. Now, as long as you are fine with that and you understand how these numbers work, that's fine. I mean, it was actually Ed messaged me on WhatsApp and he said, you know what, watching that second session, or the back end of the second video there, that section about RTP and expected results at the end of it, he was kind of saying, like, I knew that already. You know, in my head, I had that already, but actually seeing you, like, lay the numbers down like that made me sort of realise what, the correct decision that I made, which a few months ago was just to walk away from these random machines in the pub and not play them anymore. But there's something quite stark about seeing the maths of it laid out, because make no mistake, the more you play, the more you will lose as a mathematical certainty. Do not fixate on you getting your 90% or your 92% or anything like that. They don't work like compensated machines. All that happens as the spin sample gets bigger, so does your expected loss, so does the amount of money that you're going to lose. And unfortunately, folks, that's what we've got. That's what we have in the pubs now. Even if you have long memories and you're pretty old now, like I am, and you remember the era of, the £4.80 fruit machine, that was what was on the go when I first started going to the pub. I mean, when me and Ed were out there and I was playing Vamp It Up in the arcade, yeah, it was a bit of an old knackered machine and there were a few bulbs out and all the rest of it, but I loved playing that. That was so enjoyable to play. After, I don't mind the randoms to a point. If you can get in a little run with the features and all the rest of it, yes, they can be quite entertaining. But as Ed said, you're basically playing a fucking spreadsheet on the random games. You could make, if you wanted to, you could make a spreadsheet that had 1 million rows in it. All the rows in there added up to 92% RTP, or the balls in the bag analogy if you want to use that as well. That works perfectly fine as well. And just say, okay, out of my spreadsheet that's got 1 million rows in it, pound to go. If you add up all the rows, they come to £920,000. There's your 92% RTP. Okay, Excel, give me a random row out of that spreadsheet and show me what I've got. Yes, I get that that's what they are, but they can be entertaining. I've got a real soft spot for the blueprints. I like the blueprints. That their graphics are great, the sound, the music, and the themed games. Like, as you know, I'm a complete sucker for Worms because I remember playing Worms, crikey, back on the Amiga in the 1990s. When did that come out? 1994, the original Worms. So I remember all that stuff, and it's quite fun, but on a limited basis. This is partly why, incidentally, I don't go to the pub to drink and gamble by myself, because I know full well that way lies losing a lot of money. That's why I keep it in that box. When I'm going out, when I'm with friends, with company in the pub, I'll have a go then. As much as we would like it, folks, this stuff isn't coming back. Outside of the odd retro arcade now, maybe there's still the odd Betcom or Reflex out in the pub somewhere, but even then the £100 machines are fairly garbage. Yes, one thing that you could say about a Betcom, of course, is that your absolute worst case scenario on a Betcom pretty much is you'll be 200 quid in and it'll give you 100 quid back, and it will take you quite a while to play that through as well. But really, the golden era of the fruit machine, I know that I give compensated machines a lot of shit, and I think that is justified. Everything that I've said about compensated machines in many, many videos on my channel, I stand by, in that they never worked properly. There were just far too many problems with them over the years. And from a fairness perspective, I think it's pretty hard to argue that random machines are not fairer. They are fairer in that everybody has an equal chance of winning, but also that means that from a player's perspective, you can't walk up to a random machines with any knowledge and gain an advantage. Now, I was on the wrong side of that for 10 years. I have covered that. There are those 5 gambling low ebbs videos on my channel. Take it from me. If you haven't, and I know that many people who watch my channel have been in the same spot as me as well, people over at Desert Island Fruits and so on. Let me tell you folks, if you're on the wrong side of that knowledge, if you're on the wrong side of knowing how to take the value and or even understanding that compensated machines can be fucked with, that is a very, very miserable place to be in. So on that level, I do think that random machines are a better bet from a fairness perspective for players, but I'm not happy with these crappy RTPs, these high stakes, these inducements to play high stakes as well, whereby the machine explicitly tells you £2 to go, mate, or I'm going to fuck you on the RTP and I'm going to take some of the extra bells and whistles off you as well. Things like Gambling Wins can fuck off for me as well. Ocean's 11, that really slow one that I was playing, where, hang on a minute, where is it? The Ocean's 11 there, yeah, I know it's a bit dull, but that shows you that you can do this thing without any gamble at all. That thing can and does pay jackpots as well. There's one section where you can hear one of the other guys in the pub talking to me and Ed, and he said, oh yeah, I've had the full screen of sharks on that like 3 times. I've had the full screen of sharks on that as well. They built a game there that pays 94% on any stake, and it can and does pay its jackpot relative to the stake as well. So that's entirely doable. So £2 price of play, that can piss off for me. Sub 94% RTPs, that can piss off as well. Gambling, that can piss off. I think this stuff can be improved from a regulatory perspective, but the core concept here of a random game, and I say this as someone who was able from the year 2000 onwards was able to consistently win on compensated machines, I cannot defend them from a fairness perspective. But at the same time, make no mistake, I do miss stuff like this. I think you could argue a case for screenplay being absolutely peak fruit machine. I think you could argue, or indeed I am going to argue, that on many levels, this was as good as it ever got. It's a fruit machine that's got video games and a quiz machine in it as well. How genius is that? It does it with a small stake, small prizes. Okay, it had the streak in there. It had the standard Maygay streak in there of the time. But in terms of, the rate of knots at which you can lose money on this, it's really not that bad. And remember that this started life with a £4.80 jackpot. Now, we know that the £6 jackpot came in on the 1st of January 1993, so this machine must have existed in 1992 for it to have been on a £4.80 jackpot. That was 33 years ago. We had this 33 years ago, and yet look at where we are now. I mean, the last vestiges of the £100 Betcoms and Reflexes In the case of Betcoms, we've just got that absolutely bog standard. Force it and you'll get a 100 or 150. And the reflexes, which kind of behave like £25 jackpot machines most of the time, and then will occasionally unlock a £100. In terms of expected rate of loss, now, we kind of were talking about this here in this thread. I reckon that depending on which way you do the numbers, we can conservatively say, I think a conservative estimate of how much you will lose playing these random games. I mean, that one there is really kind. This one here, Ocean's 11 on a pound to go, 94%, is nowhere near as bad. But certainly on something like Worms here, which is £2 to go, 92%, your expected loss on this is something in the region of £100 an hour. If you want to bring it down to absolute brass tacks, and if you want to have a number in your head, just consider that these things are going to cost you £100 an hour on average. Yes, you may have some wins and losses along the way, but remember, once that spin sample gets big enough, mathematically, you're going to be about on expected results. The bigger your spin sample, the closer you're going to get to that mathematical expectation. So just consider that doing this is going to cost you £100 an hour. If you're okay with that, fine, not a problem. I am prepared to accept that this will cost me £100 an hour on the fairly rare occasions that I do it. But I think it's important to have that number in mind and important to have that understanding that this is ultimately what playing these things will cost you. And have a think about what your income is. Think about what your wages or other income, whatever it may be. If you can't make £100 an hour, then you're going to be, against your best case earning scenario, these things will be taking cash off you. And with all that said, shall we just have, as a reminder of what we've lost, I've covered screenplay on the channel before twice, but never doing the more modern sort of volume thing, because even for the time, this had a really, really great sound package. They didn't have much room in the ROMs. So this was the era of Maygay's where they had a mixture of synth sound and sampled sound. But again, Maygay's designers at the time, really, really good. They obviously had some very smart, clever people working for them, some really keen designers at Maygay. Whoever came up with this, I doff my cap to you. Putting a fucking telly in a fruit machine and then putting video games and a quiz machine on there. What genius idea. Absolutely fantastic. Let's have a look. Let's have a go. We've got blasts of madness and all sorts. Now, the only problem is I generally, when I play this, and I do play this one fairly often, it's one of my absolute favourite emulated machines, this. The problem is that I tend to play... Oh! I tend to play it until it pays a bit of something out, so it might be in a bad mood. So let's have a go at this. Okay, so that was the second one, wasn't it? I used to be able to hit this all the way to the top all the time. That was that one. But my old man eyes or modern LCD screens are a combination of... Oh, was that the last one or the second one? It was the second one. Oh, dear. Oh, there we are. Straight back in. I'm listening to this. Just fucking fantastic, this. Oh my god, it's some good fucking... Oh, can you imagine? If they just had these in the pub now. Put them on a modern-ish jackpot. I'd be happy with fucking 20 quid, 30 quid, something like that. I want to try and do better this time. God, yeah, but we have lost something here, haven't we? We really, really have. Oh, that was the last one again. And why am I so bad at this? Because I'm an old fucker, that's why. Was that the second one or the last one? I think it was the... Yes, it was fucking hell. I'm fucking fucked on this. That was that one, I think. Yeah, that's a bit better. Come right, you'll really hustle now. I think that was number 4. Yes, come on. One more. Come on. Come on. I think it was that one. No. Remember, we only put a tenner in. If I can get I'm going to hold that to see if I can... Oh, I didn't hold the screenplay thing there. So 1 nudge. So we'll go for a hold after nudges on melons. We didn't get that. And where are we? Now remember here that... Oh, no. On the Pook DX here, what he's done here is a PDX. I did cover this in the original video, where he's basically made the screen bigger. That just makes it far more usable in the emulator, and that would have been a technical limitation of the time, because Maygay had to use a CRT. And obviously you can't put a fucking 20-inch telly in the back of a fruit tree, not an old-fashioned telly. That was a bit of a sketchy gamble, by the way. I'm sure if they would have had this technology available, flat panel screens, they would have used it, but they had to use a little CRT. This was a design decision that Pook made, and I completely agree it was the right one to do. Oh, what the fuck was that? Oh, yeah. I'd never quite mastered that, I have to say. That would work perfectly on the original 480 jackpot, by the way, because... Oh, it's quiz machine, here we go. Because if you would have hit every single one, it would have been £2.40, you see, which is your cash repeater, isn't it? Collect... well, nothing's any good there. So there isn't a cash prize there. Sometimes it'll give you a cash prize. Which of these was not... Oh, I don't know. Dear me, I don't know who was... Unfortunately, I have revealed my ignorance of literary matters there. I didn't know that one. I've already got a £5 back out of me tenner. But yeah, I know there are still retro arcades where you can go and play these, which is fantastic. But God, ooh, now. But God, thank you for the miracle. Oh, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Is that there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I think it's there on 10 nudges, isn't it? See there, because if you're not familiar with this one, that there, every bar adds to the screenplay sort of clapperboard there. Double bar adds 2, and a single bar adds 1. And there's 10... Where is it? I can't remember which one 10 nudges is. Where are you? Where are you? Hang on a minute. Have I... There we are. Oh dear, folks, we just didn't know how good we had it, did we? Oh, what we've... Oh, there we are. I'm having a little bit of a... Oh no, I'm so bad at concentration. I can do it on the Crystal Maze SWP, but I can't. I'm going to try it. Oh my God, The other thing is, it fucks you on the fucking... Where was a 10? Oh no, there's a 10. Oh no, what the fuck? Fuck it. It should at least give you unlimited picks and not fuck you on the time, but that was really, really bad. I cannot tell a lie. That was not great. So I've won on my tenner. Oh, come on, give us some money. Oh, no cash prize again. Let's try transport. In which country is Olympic Airways? Sounds Greek to me. Yeah, there we go. Now, it doesn't really help us because 2 nudges doesn't give us a win there. Can do a hold after nudges. It doesn't really like to. It's not his favourite thing to do, holds after nudges, this thing. But we've done all right. We've got £6 tokens and the rest is cash. Oh, and another one. Cash. Oh, there we are. Now, this is a big question. It's for £1. Lockheed, wasn't it? McDonnell Douglas? McDonald Douglas. Yeah, I thought it was McDonald Douglas. Right, okay. £1, or right, we're not having fucking concentration. Something that's not nighttime. You see, now I should collect nighttime, but I want to try and get a different feature. That was a very silly gamble. I only did that because I wanted to get a different feature. The good news is, though, of course, that this is emulated. It's not being lost. We're not just talking about it. The most amazing thing here is that it's not just me spouting off or a bunch of old geezers on Desert Island Fruit saying, oh, do you remember that machine called Screenplay in the 1990s? That was amazing. It had a telly in it, it had video games and a quiz machine on it and all that. And we'd be like, oh, yeah, I remember that. Oh. But we can play it. We can actually play it. Oh, my Lord. Thank you to the joy of emulation and, of course, Mr. Wizard. Sadly, no longer with us. But he lives on. His legacy lives on through emulation. Oh, there we are. 3 holes. I fucking love playing this one. What have we got? Duck Shoot. Oh, I did so well on it last time. What's it going to be? I want that cash. Oh, now we like a win series. It can be disappointing, this, but I do like a win series. Not many samples, but they do well with them. Don't just be the basic 2-win one. It can fuck you with that. No, it's the absolute worst. That is the bottom of the barrel win series there. You always get 2 wins, but it can just dick you. I'm putting more money in now. I always do this when I play this. I'll collect in a sec. I will collect. I think I'm a little bit up. I think I put 12 quid in and I've got £13.80 out. So there you go. Look, when I say all this about the random games, I am very, very cognizant of the fact that we used to have this stuff. And the compensated fruit machine, the kind of perverse thing about the compensated fruit machine is that it got worse over time. As the jackpot went up and the stake went up, they became a worse and worse proposition for the casual player, for the player who perhaps didn't know anything about them. And we lost the gameplay as well. You know, when your jackpot is this small, you can put loads of skill features in. You can put a lot like Maygay did here, where you've got all these different games and all of them can pay the top cash prize, or in some cases the jackpot and so on. We lost all that. Compensated machines very much lost their way, and in the end it's the random games that have taken over. The one bit of good news there is that we have emulation. Yes, there are retro arcades, which I think is brilliant as well, but you may not be within 200 miles of a retro arcade. It may be completely impossible for you to get to a retro arcade. For example, for me to go to Mr. P's would be a trip away. That would involve flying or sailing and travelling hundreds of miles across the UK, staying in a hotel and all the rest of it. As much as I'd love to go to one of the Mr. P's, it's going to be a bit of a journey to do that, but we can all just play them, these great old classic machines, in our homes via emulation, which is an absolute blessing, because what we've got in the pubs, honestly, for what they are, they're okay for a little bit of a blast here and there, which is the way I approach them. There's 2 things going on. First of all, once you get involved with a session on them, their limitations become very clear, because you are, as Ed said, you're just playing a fucking spreadsheet, and they're incredibly expensive as well because of these awful, awful RTPs that they're set to, and they demand large stakes from you as well, because if you don't go in on the top stake, you're reducing your RTP and then increasing your expected loss even further. So it's a little bit of a horrible combo there from a player perspective that makes these things potentially financially ruinous if you properly start lumping away at them. Keep that number in your head, folks. On expected results, playing random games in the pub, you will be losing around £100 an hour. Yes, they can be entertaining. Yes, they can be fun. And yes, you can win on them. But keep that in the back of your head. Ultimately, is this something that I am comfortable doing? Something that will cost me, in the long run, £100 an hour? and ultimately will never, ever, ever be even a tiny bit as much fun, really, as Maygay gave us with screenplay back in the year 1992. Like I say, folks, how far we have fallen. Thank you very much for watching. I do hope you have enjoyed this video, and I will catch up with you next time. But for now, as ever, it is goodbye. I will just wait for this to come round in the attract mode there. You were very, very good, Maygay. When you were good, you were great. Of course, they completely lost their way in the £8 era. There's videos on the channel about how Maygay totally fucked up and disappeared into oblivion. But at this time here, they were absolutely on top of the world. Anyway, I'm going. Bye-bye.